It's time for another Devo tip on the weird clothing laws in the Bible. I have a lot of sympathy for those who have been wounded by insensitive words and harsh treatment, especially when it comes from Christians. So the last thing I want to do is to add more pain. So how do we interpret the weird law in Deuteronomy 22:5 that says, "A woman shall not wear a man's garment, nor shall a man put on a woman's cloak. For whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord your God." Is this about who gets to wear the pants? This law is a good example of how archaeology can help. Christianity is a historical faith based on actual events. In this case, archaeological discoveries can enhance our understanding of the clothing that is worn by the people in the Bible. At the ancient cemetery of Beni Hassan in Egypt, it reveals a distinctive clothing difference between the Hebrew people and the Egyptians. The two Egyptians wear the traditional white linen kilt, but the Hebrews are wearing colorful robes. The length of the men's robes stopped at the knees. The length of the women's robes came down close to their ankles. The men are wearing sandals, while the women are wearing fashionable short boots. But no one is wearing pants. On the famous obelisk of Shalmaneser III, we see Jehu, the king of Israel, bowing before the king of Assyria. Neither Jehu, the Assyrians, nor the Israelites are wearing pants. If everyone was wearing robes, what was the reason for a woman shall not wear a man's garment, nor shall a man put on a woman's cloak? What's the reason for this law? The word abomination occurs 117 times in the Old Testament. And in the majority of these cases, abomination is used to describe the behavior associated with pagan, idolatrous practices that are abhorrent to God. Here's just one example out of 117. When you come into the land that the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not learn to follow the abominable practices of those nations. Okay, so we're dealing with pagan practices. Once again, archaeology comes into play. The Canaanites were known for building high places to their gods, Baal and Asherah. These high places had an altar, you can see, with rooms around it for male cult prostitutes and female cult prostitutes. Canaanite literature confirms that cultic prostitutes engaged in sexual acts with participants at these high places in order to elicit a response from Baal. More to the point, these cult prostitutes wore special garments that identified with Baal and Asherah, garments that would often disguise their gender. In 2 Kings 10:22, Jehu says to the one who was in charge of the wardrobe, "Bring out the vestments for all the worshippers of Baal." You see, worshippers of Baal wore clothes that identified them as worshippers of Baal. At one point, even the Israelite women were sewing these special garments. Josiah broke down the houses of the male cult prostitutes who were in the house of the Lord, where the women wove hangings for Asherah. The exchange of gender roles in pagan cults was not uncommon in the ancient Near East. Deuteronomy 22:5 has nothing to do with who wears the pants. It's really about idolatry. And idolatry always seems to distort God's image, doesn't it? Creating confusion for God's image bearers. Instead of reflecting God's image, idols can only reflect a confused, broken, distorted image. We must help each other to follow Jesus. Everyone is created in God's image and deserves dignity and respect, no matter what identity issues they are facing. The good news of the gospel is that all of us are equally invited to be met and transformed by God's tender, loving grace in Christ Jesus.